Welcome to Keys of the Kingdom. I'm Brother Gregory, and we've done a couple of videos and interviews with my son. And one thing that he brought up was a House Bill 2238, which is, will speak for itself. We'll read it to you in the interview. But the reason we bring it up is because of the spirit that we see coming from the government, from the people, that is influencing a great deal of what is going on in the world today, and our only defense is the truth. And Plato once said that good people don't need laws to get them to do what they need to do that is right, and bad people will find a way around them. And so Tacitus also said, the more laws, the more corrupt society. So we're looking at some of these laws. There was a law that was trying to force vaccination before the pandemic even began. These come from somewhere, and they're showing you the spirit that is moving in society itself, not just in the government. The halls of government are not the problem. The problem is the spirit that is dwelling in us. Evil doesn't care whether you get mad at it or if you flee it. Right now we've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people losing their jobs, their businesses, their livelihoods, and soon we will have the same numbers of people losing their life. And evil wants you to become angry, or it wants you to become afraid. Neither one is the solution. So anyway, we make these videos available so that you can stimulate thought and conversations amongst yourselves, but mostly so that you will realize the only answer is to seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness. So anyway, I put the video together. We leave stuff in, like in the 1871 theory video, just to show you that we're humans, and that just like you, and we're just trying to seek the truth, because the truth will set you free.
But today we're looking at a lot of things changing at a very rapid rate in this nation. And I can't see everything. I'm not aware of everything. I can't keep up with it all, because I'm focused on my county, I'm focused on my communities, and I'm focused on my family. And I'm tunnel visioned in that respect. But I try to at least broaden my horizon to pay attention to what's happening in Oregon and stay up to date with some of the bigger things going on in the nation and the world. One of the things that I was informed of today was a particular House bill that is going to be making its way through the Oregon legislature in 2021. House Bill 2238. And I'm bringing attention to this because, and I mean, you can obviously go look this up and read it, and I'm sure that my father will, because I haven't even really shown this to anyone yet. I just finished kind of reading it this evening, but it definitely perked my curiosity, and caused a great amount of concern. Related to private property during emergencies, and be it enacted by the people of the state of Oregon. There's that word again, people. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that phrase, that all the people of the state of Oregon are okay with what's in this bill. An owner of property that is in used or possessed only temporarily under this section is not entitled to compensation, except as the owner may prove entitlement to compensation under Article 1, Section 18 of the Oregon State Constitution. It goes on further that whenever the governor has declared a state of emergency, the governor may issue, amend, and enforce rules and orders to control, restrict, and regulate by rationing, freezing, use of quotas, prohibitions on shipments, price fixing, allocations, or other means, the use, sale, or distribution of food, feed, fuel, clothing, and other commodities, materials, goods, and services. Goes on to say, prescribe and direct. This is the authority of the governor under a state of emergency that she would have. She will have the authority to prescribe and direct activities in connection with use, conservation, salvage, and prevention of waste of materials, services, and facilities, including but not limited to production, transportation, power and communication facilities, training and supply of labor, utilization of industrial plants, health and medical care, nutrition, housing, rehabilitation, education, welfare, childcare, recreation, consumer protection, and other essential civil needs.
Welcome to Egypt.
And lastly, this is pretty much the end of the bill. Take any other action, including through the seizure, use, or possession of any real or personal property that may be necessary for the management of resources following an emergency.
I could think of the people that you could send that to.
I could boil people's blood, but now the reality is this is only proposed. I'm not saying it's going to pass. I'm not saying that
somebody took the time to write it up.
Oh yes, and and I don't have a problem saying his name, Representative Wilde. He's been around for a while, and I'm well acquainted with many of the bills that he proposes. Now, I'm not trying to bash a representative or go after him in any way, shape, or form. I personally, I've never had the pleasure of meeting the man. But here's my thoughts. That is actually, like, you make a good point. Someone went through the trouble of writing that. So these are thoughts that are crossing the minds of those who are meant to represent us and, above all else, preserve and protect our freedoms and way of life. Now, we could have a long conversation about what my opinion is of what his duties are, or whether or not he's fulfilling them, or any representative is. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here talking about the fact that I see a tremendous amount of overreach taking place in the government, and also I want to focus in on what we're going to do about it as free souls under God, if you will, if there are any of those left.
Yeah, that's the thing, is, are we free souls under God?
So here's the conversation then.
How do we get to be free souls under God? And I don't think there's any way we can do it without God's help. So how do we get God to hear our prayers? Because God said in 1 Samuel 8 that if we went a certain way, which we have gone for the last 100 years that way, that when we cry out, he would not hear our prayers. So the trick is to figure out how he can hear our prayers. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of things that we should be doing in the meantime, but denial is not one of them.
Okay, but who are you praying to?
Well, that's the thing, is that I know who I'm praying to. I know who other people say they're praying to. I had a friend once who was asking a church for help for somebody who was being abused by a court and by a government, and the guy said he wouldn't do anything for him, but he said he would pray for him, and the guy says, well, don't, because I'm not sure who you're praying to. And the reality was, you have to know the guy would be there, but it was very, very to the point. Jesus said, it's not those who say, Lord, Lord, but those who doeth the will of the Father. So the more, Jesus used words like strive and persevere, and those are action words. Those are words of effort. We won't succeed by our own effort alone. We'll only, I think, at this stage, succeed by a miracle. But if you want God to meet you halfway, you have to go halfway. Right. You have to go in the right direction. You can't be running from it and blaming other people for the present state of things. They've published this long before that bill, that this was where they were going. World Economic Forum, World Reset. They've admitted openly in major governments that the world reset, this new great reset that they talk about, is the end of private property. I have been writing for 40, 50 years based on the basic definition of legal title, you've lost private property a long time ago.
Right. And see, these are mainly amendments to
Yeah.
bills that are all to law that's already in place, granting the
this
governor
is
huge
really
authority
notice-
over emergencies.
This is just notice that they are going to enforce the
Right.
fact that you don't own anything to begin with.
Right.
And you don't own anything to begin with because of choices you made way back in 1913.
Yeah, I'm just sounding the alarm.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
this is where they're going.
we know governors have, and I'm going to say this because I know there will be people that will listen to this and be like and make this argument. Governors have a tremendous amount of authority during states of emergency. They always have. For a long time, at least.
It's important that they actually be the governor.
Okay, we can go that route, but let's just stay here.
The point is,
I know
you're absolutely right. The state police are going to do what they say anyway.
Right, but this is the thing. When I work with OEM, the Oregon Emergency Management, or when I'm learning about what their role is to play in these things, and we talk about emergencies, states of emergency, so to speak, and you have real things that happen. Massive earthquakes. There's one here on the West Coast that we've been talking about for a long time called Cascadia, and where the potential of huge tsunamis that could hit the West Coast and kill a lot of people.
Hundreds of thousands could die.
Really bad.
Overnight.
All the way up and down the West Coast. Not just Oregon, but California and Washington would all be affected, and even Canada.
Even Japan.
Right, absolutely, because it'd be a major earthquake. We're talking subduction earthquakes, things that you'd feel all the way across Oregon and into Idaho.
According to history, it happens
else.
every 300 years.
Right, and we're overdue.
Overdue
and
by 70 years.
A lot of folks feel this way. Okay, so you have a state of emergency, say. And in that state of emergency, the governor, the head honcho, the chief, says, okay, I can't call the whole legislature together because a good portion of them might be underwater right now. So we're going to do what we can to keep things going. So states of emergency are useful in that sense. But states of emergencies have an expiration. They typically end once the emergency has subsided. And typically those don't last very long, and those emergencies are only restrictive to the emergency that is at hand. So like a flood or an earthquake or a fire.
Or a flu.
Typically it goes away, right?
Typically it goes away.
Now, we've been in a state of emergency here in Oregon and throughout most of the nation for over a year. And we've been talking about the fact that, okay, maybe through the evolution of the world and the fact that maybe, okay, you can even say the virus itself is a very serious deal and we've got to keep this state of emergency going because of all the issues that we're having. But we should change the way that state of emergency looks and the actual executive authority that is granted to the governors in these situations. But this bill right here shows you, and it should show you,
the spirit.
Correct, of where this is going. We're not having a debate right now about trying to restructure the executive authority to make sure that we limit it in certain places so we're not overbearing on people's liberties and we're not trampling on them. No. This bill is granting additional authority. This bill is
spelling it out.
It's spelling it out and it's seeking to say, we're not going to stop this emergency. It's going to keep going for a while. We know that it will. I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel as far as stopping the state of emergency that is right now in Oregon. Like this law, you don't have the ability right now to go into your state capital in the state of Oregon and listen and talk and meet people face to face. Oregon's closed down their Capitol building. Idaho's open, California's open, Oregon is not. So they're looking at passing these bills, and simply because you can log on through the internet and you can see it and you can still maybe write some letters, they're going to be bringing this to the floor. And this is concerning because it shows you we're going in the opposite direction with so many other things as well. This is just one bill. There's thousands of bills are being brought forward.
are seeing this, and they're saying, "Oh, they don't have the right to do this," and they're complaining and they're whining. And
see, this is I want to break people.
Not opening Oregon is creating an emergency of its own. Because it's actually creating more problems than it's solving.
I've talked about that, at least, in terms of like we should withdraw the emergency declaration and declare another emergency because of the emergency that we've created by our actions.
Absolutely, and it's coming. Those of you who understand economies, worldwide economies, there are people starving all over. I got off the phone today with people from other countries. This is going all over the world. It's the World Economic Forum that is really pushing all this and using this to reset the world in the image that they want it created. Complaining on Facebook is not the solution. Getting afraid is not the solution. Getting to know what's going on, know where your rights really are, know how your rights can be protected. And I'm not talking about the courts. I'm talking about, this is a spiritual evil that wants to control that big long list of every single thing that you think you own.
Yeah, but you do not.
And your land and your life and your family and whether you're going to get a vaccination or not. They want to control every aspect of your life. Yeah. This is not new.
No.
You go back to Clinton and his executive orders that he said that the federal government is the supreme moral authority in your life. In an executive order, he stated that. And this is Bill Clinton stating this for everybody. What on earth is going on? Well, this is what we've been studying for years and years and years. We've seen this coming for years and years and years. We've shown you, like tracking a bobcat in the desert. We've shown you the trail that they're leaving behind. Mm-hmm. Like Mein Kampf, they're publishing this so that you can see.
Right.
World Economic Forum, they've been saying they're going to take away private property and they're going to use the COVID pandemic in order to do that. It's
interesting you use Mein Kampf.
Oh, yeah, because Mein Kampf, he told you everything he was going to do.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hide it.
There is something in the law of nature where evil will tell you what they are going to do ahead of time. But if you're not paying attention, you're not only going to not see it coming, you're not going to know what to do.
But see, that's because my personal feelings on that is that people are in a delusion. And they're delusional about what they're hearing and thinking that, oh, well, that couldn't possibly happen to us. And the reason evil men tell you before they do things is because real evil men actually think that what they're doing is good. They think it's right. They think they're justified. That's the truth of real evil, is not knowing what is evil, because
they call evil good.
Yeah, they think this is great.
Yeah, because we're going to have control ripped away from all these people who don't know what they're doing. And the truth is, a lot of you don't know what you're doing. You don't know where your rights are. You don't know what's happening. You're all caught up in your own life, and I understand that. Life takes up time. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, if you really want, I've said this many times, I can find people who want to be free everywhere. But I can't find people who want to be responsible.
Right.
Christ said you had to love your neighbor as yourself. You have to care about your neighbor's freedom as much as you care about yourself. If you just want to be free, that's not going to cut it. You have to care about others. You have to learn the early church, the early Christians, the early Israelites, they knew they had to come together or they would all perish individually apart. But what binds them together? And this is another thing we teach, and we teach it on the Preparing You site too. One thing I want to say to people is don't be afraid of these things. That we're not saying this to frighten you. If we wake somebody up to take a deeper look, that's great. But I want people to realize that a lot of the people that are under this delusion, they think these people they're voting in are their salvation. They're not. They're telling you they're going to take everything away from you.
Mm-hmm.
they're going to forgive our student loans. No, they're going to put your student loans on everybody else. And that's okay with you because you don't really love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
You don't want to pay your way. You want to make your neighbor pay your way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to take a bite out of your neighbor, prepare to be devoured.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 100 years, Americans have been thinking, we still think a lot about each other. They're still one of the most charitable countries in the world.
Yeah.
But we're less now than we've ever been in the past.
Right.
And we have to change that process and go back the other way.
And the world depends on us in a lot of ways. I think that we need to be setting that example, but we're not right now. I mean, you were just talking about starvation, and I like putting people in putting a perspective on the table that 9 million people die every year on average in the world of starvation. Just starvation. 9 million people die. Okay, I'm not going to try and make a comparison to COVID numbers of deaths or anything like that, but I'm just saying 9 million people die of starvation. 820 million people, 820 million people suffer from starvation worldwide.
And according to the
That's
UN
almost a billion people.
That's going up because of the shutdown.
Right, that is
by
going up.
Thousands and thousands a day.
Almost a billion people are suffering from starvation in the world. We only have about 7.5 billion people on the planet.
Mm.
So what is that? We're producing supposedly more food than we've ever produced before. Our agriculture and everything else is more efficient than it's ever been. So what's happening? What did we do wrong? What is going on in the world that our priorities aren't necessarily straight? So going back to something about, working with your neighbor, I really think that's where I'd want to end this show and this conversation, because we've talked a lot about some of the other issues. We talked about 1871. We've talked about some of the concern over bills and the laws that are coming down, and possibly the intentions of dictators and people of authoritarian nature. We even mentioned the concept of prayer. People going to the state capitol to pray. People want freedom, but I always ask, how many government benefits are you taking?
At the expense of your neighbor.
Right.
At the expense of your neighbor's children, because every government benefit you obtain today in every country of the world today comes to you by way of borrowing money from the future of your children.
Right. I made the comment that the government gives you nothing that they didn't first. The government gives you nothing that they did not first take from someone else. And someone said, well, not really, because they probably just print the money. And I'm thinking, they're borrowing against the lives of your children and grandchildren. Yeah, no. They're putting your children and grandchildren into more debt than this world has ever seen. My generation is going to be inheriting more debt than any generation in history of mankind.
Yeah, everybody out there owes more money at the end of this show than they did when we started.
That's right. So if you think that you got all your debts paid off, sorry.
Yeah.
There's one big one that's just going to be hanging out there. And that is because of the course that we have taken throughout history. It isn't something that went wrong in just the 19th century. It's been something that we haven't remained vigilant in.
It didn't start with COVID.
No. COVID was an excellent opportunity for those who wanted to seek additional power and authority. But it was going sideways long before. And that's what I feel we need to at least be cognizant of. Now, you mentioned you didn't want to be a downer. You don't want to necessarily be doom and gloom and scare anyone. I'm not trying to scare anyone either, but I think it's important that we're at least honest about what we're dealing with and what we're looking at. I think it is very prudent to say that if you have a neighbor, you should get to know who they are. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what the future of communication holds. We're seeing all this banning and this kind of cleansing of social media, so to speak, of thought.
Canceling.
Cancel culture has reached a new high.
Yeah.
And I don't know where things are going, but I can tell you that we need to focus on the more important things, the weightier matters of knowing who those people are around us and looking out for our neighbor, looking out for them because they may be the only people you have someday. I can't guarantee that Uncle Sam's always going to be there for you. I'm not saying that Uncle Sam's coming for you. I'm saying that Uncle Sam may not be able to help you. I
can pretty much guarantee that he's not always going to be there for you, but I cannot guarantee your neighbor will be either.
Granted, which is why you need to probably start developing a relationship with them and it not be entirely on Facebook.
Yeah.
Whether you're still on Facebook or not. I know a lot of people that aren't.
Yeah, at Preparing You, we created a software so that you can join what we call the Living Network.
Right.
And it's based on geography.
Right.
So if you're in California, you join the California group, and of course that's just an email group when you join. But the idea is that you get together with others, and this is one of the hardest things to do because people, it was very common in America,
right, that
everybody you went to your local church. You didn't go to the welfare office. Mm-hmm. You didn't go to the government. You went to your local community. The people helped each other out. This is what made America great. It wasn't the Constitution. It wasn't the presidents of the United States. It was the communities, the people who got up, went to work, took care of their families, and found time to be there for their neighbors. When there was floods, famines, shortage of food, fires, whatever it was, they came together and resolve the issue, and they did it with love. And that spirit was stronger in America probably than almost anywhere else.
Right.
It has taken a beating over the last 50 years of great societies and welfare institutions, and now we're totally dependent upon government for so many things we used to provide for one another.
Even in this small community. I mean, I was at a meeting not too long ago where an old-timer stepped up and he started telling some stories about how back in the day they didn't even have a proper ambulance and everything was volunteer, and still is. Most everything is volunteer here in our county.
Fire department,
EMS, everything. They didn't have an ambulance, so what they had was an old hearse. And I remember when the story was being told, someone in the back of the room said, "Man, that's got to be a bad sign."
I think I remember when they bought it. I must be an old timer.
No, it was a long time ago. But the hearse, I think, broke down, and someone was using a pickup to drive someone 100 miles to the nearest hospital. A neighboring EMS group actually gave them their first ambulance, and it's all entirely volunteer, trying to pull together whatever minuscule resources we had to try and make it work. And guys answering the call. They're out there running their cows, they're taking care of their ranch and everything else, and all of a sudden they get a call, someone needs an ambulance. And they stop and drop everything. And they go get on the ambulance, and they have so-and-so pick them up on the way. And they run up there and they get that person to the hospital, to the helicopter, wherever they need to go.
And see, that's residual leftover because this community, we're kind of the place that time forgot to some degree. But our first ambulance, I remember way back when we first came here, I remember them buying a used ambulance, or it was maybe given to them and the money was all just to fix it up. But it looked like the old Ghostbusters ambulance.
It's an old hearse.
And they said, basically it's the Ghostbuster theme. Who are you going to call? Yeah. And still to this day, they get upset sometimes because when we do need an EMT, we actually call him because he's in our phone. And they say, you're supposed to go through dispatch.
You got to go through dispatch. Don't call me on my cell phone. Yeah, right.
And I said, I got you. Come in anyway.
No, we know who to call, though.
Yeah, we know who to call.
If I'm in trouble and I'm bleeding out, I know who to call.
Yeah. And there are people who aren't even on the EMT thing that could probably suture stuff better than some of them. But the reality is, when I came here, the mail truck was still called the stage.
Right.
And And so the idea of people helping people, it's still really alive in this community, but we're out in the middle of nowhere.
Right, and we need to cultivate that in whatever community that we happen to live in. The answer isn't to just find those little niche communities that are poor and they don't have a lot of people and they still have the little remnants of that old culture still there. The idea is to cultivate that culture wherever you are.
I think the spirit in America is still here, but we, like you say, cultivate it. We need to cultivate it.
We're out of practice.
Yeah, and trust is not something you can get by signing a paper. Trust comes from what you do. Mm-hmm. And it will pass from generation to generation. But so
organize in the tens and hundreds and thousands. Organize and look out for your neighbor. The tens, hundreds, and thousands, that isn't just some people out there. Those should be people you know. Well, all of them, at least those 10.
When we make reference to that, now I know you're familiar with it, but most people think, well, that's the way the Jews organized under Moses. That's the way the early church organized, because it was Christ's own words that commanded his disciples to organize the people in the tens, hundreds, and thousands. That's in the biblical text. Mm-hmm. Most people go like, I never read that. It's right in there. We explain that. And we have articles up on that.
Right.
And the reason why, well, there's a lot of reasons why, but one of the reasons, if they had not done that, Christians would not have survived the decline and fall of the Roman Empire.
Well, and it makes sense, and we exercise it in other things. Like here in Oregon, we have Oregon Emergency Management, and you have the ICS system, Incident Command, which isn't just Oregon. That's not exclusive to Oregon. That's all over the place. But the idea behind it is that you really can't manage more than maybe 5 people tops. You know, as an incident commander, as a commander, or anyone in a chain of command, you really can't have more than about 5 people reporting to you. Now, and so they just say that's how they structure everything. It's kind of a pyramid. You have your incident commander. He has so many people under him, typically 3 or 4, and then under that you have the different teams split up, and then you have structure, and you're not inundating someone with a ton of different people all coming to them with their problems, and oh my gosh, we got a fire over here and we got a fire over here, oh, and there's a flood over here. And that's actually quite common to have floods and fires at the same time. It happens a lot, actually. So if you've got a major emergency, you want to have structure and people you can depend on, that you're working with
and know you can depend on.
Right.
So you have to develop that relationship before the emergency arrives.
Right. So building from the ground up, Moses had a rule. Jesus has a rule. And I would say that's probably because God has a rule, saying that if you're going to come together, no more than 10. Come together in a group, no more than 10. You can have less, but then you guys got to pick somebody that's going to be your go-to person to work with.
And that go-to person is connected with 9 other guys at the same level that he's
right.
at.
And then those guys have their go-to person.
Right. But one of the things about the principles of the kingdom of God, which is this tens, hundreds, and thousands, I mean, even at the time of Christ, the synagogues were still 10 families, is that it's not top down.
It's bottom up.
It's bottom up. So what it is that it's not 10 guys putting all the responsibility on one guy. It's 10 guys taking responsibility and sharing their data and their input with one guy who shares it with others.
Yep. And
because, again, if you want your rights back, you have to take back your responsibilities. That is that's written in the natural law. So if you want your natural rights back, that's the natural way to approach it.
Right.
So, anyway, this is, I don't know how long we've been going.
We've been going for quite a while, actually, but it's a good show.
Yeah. So, this is our first attempt, really. We did another show, wasn't videoed. I don't know if this will go out with video or audio, but we immediately got shut down by YouTube.
Yeah. we done got fact checked. And,
actually, they didn't even fact check us. They just saw them putting it up and said that they can put it. They took it off. They said if you put it up again, we'll take down your whole channel. Yeah. That was the threat. It wasn't. It was a video. It was an audio that we did, but it was somebody else putting it up.
Right.
And so it wasn't on our. So anyway, we'll see if we get. And we have a team of people. We have a network of people that will put these up, or share them around or whatever it takes. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and get a hold of us if you want to know more.
Thank you.
God bless.